Welcome, one and all, to the latest Revit update, and that is Revit 2024.2. Okay. Everything that is a number is always pretty big, and I'm happy to share all the new features that Revit 2024.2 includes, specifically for architecture. Of course, most of it is for architecture, which is great. So before we get into it, if at any point in this video you happen to learn something, please demolish the like button. Also, consider subscribing. That does help me so much as well. Okay, getting into it now. The first thing, and obviously we'll leave in the description a couple different links. Both of them will be to all the new features within 2024.2, but you might want to explore this themselves because you might want to read specifically what it does, so you have a better idea for your use case as opposed to kind of the more general aspect and overview of what we're looking at things here. So the first thing here, we're looking at the home page of 2024.2. We have this new Revit Home toggle down here, and I don't know, if you're using Microsoft products, you probably have seen a lot of this. Basically, you want to try new features, you want to see the new look, or whatever. It's essentially what this is. And so let's go ahead and check this box and see what it is. It's technically called the tech preview, and I'm excited by that. Okay, so first of all, not a lot has changed. We still have all of our recent projects. In this case, I'm barely using 2024 this time, but looking at it now, all of my sample projects are my most recent open, as well as all the sample families that Revit ships with. And you can always sort that by date modified and everything like that. So that's not a huge deal. It's a nicer way of looking at everything here, which is really good. It's more compressed, and that's really how things work. The cool thing here is that you can basically toggle it between a list view and a grid view that we're always used to seeing, and you can even search. So if I wanted to search for family, for some reason, if I call certain things family, then we can simply search family, and I get this list of results for specifically family. Now, this is going to be very important for BIM managers, of course, because you're probably opening a lot of models, and if you're used to opening a lot of models and families, this is fantastic. And the nice thing here is we can easily filter, and this is filtered by days or models, whether it's a family or an overall Revit model itself. This is really cool stuff. Now, great, obviously we have the grid and the list. That's cool. I think the coolest thing I like is just simply pinning this. So maybe I regularly am opening this sample structure project. Well, I can pin that, and that goes to the top. And whenever I go to the grid, I can see that it is pinned there, and it's there to the front. I like that a lot. Now, this is still probably going to be sorted by date modified. I can sort this by name or type or anything like that, but you can see it still is based on whether I have it pinned or not, and then the pinning will reflect that type or date modified name, just basically the order, and then ascending or descending. So great stuff. It's very simple, but I think this adds quite a lot to the overall user experience of Revit, even before you open a model, which is great. It's really nice stuff. Okay, so with all of that said, I don't necessarily want that pin, so I will unpin that. But let's go ahead and open this sample architecture project. And of course, what is not to love within Revit 2024, regardless of the version you're on, but the dark mode. But yes, we have new features that work with the dark mode, and it's not so much that it's new as it is what you can expect from dark mode. So obviously, once again, we can come over here to File Options, come down to Colors, and we can see our canvas color is dark, or we can just go ahead and set our overall active theme to dark or light. That's great, and you'll notice that you have specific settings for all of this based on all this. So you can change this to dark even with a UI that's light. Something I am kind of exploring is, obviously, you could use it as I use system settings. I have dark everywhere, so that's fine. But let's go ahead and just set that to dark. But we'll press OK, and obviously that's where I am here. But going back to File Options and Colors, I could actually set the canvas color to light. And so what this is going to do is going to change the background slightly. You can see that that's not black. The difference between black, obviously, and the fact that we have RGBs that are off of 0 tell me that it's not quite black. So we're getting more of this gray color, this muted color, and obviously, there's no difference between choosing dark or light besides all these different settings, and you can make all of these different settings align to the dark setting or the light. So it's kind of up to you. And if you've seen a previous couple of videos of mine of my preferences when it comes to this, I have specific colors that I have set for all of these, not necessarily within this new version yet, but what I could see is deciding which dark or light background I like based on this, and just saying, okay, well, I want this, maybe I want a dark background or a dark setting, and then I can come back later in the day and change it to light or whatever it is, vice versa, however you want to do it. But I want to just show you the canvas color scheme that looks light, and we can see that the background is, again, more of that gray color. Obviously, you can set that personally, but you have that option, which is great. So some of the new features that we're looking at specifically are with schedules, which is really cool. So this is really not doing it for me, and a lot of this is maybe why I probably would tend more toward a normal white background specifically for sheets. But I'm going to double click this sheet and we can see what we have here. Okay, so we have this lighter background that we're obviously used to seeing. This is absolutely nothing different. And I can even zoom in here and obviously, no, nothing changes. But that is primarily because I did go with that light background, that canvas option. So let's go ahead and change this to dark and see what happens. I'll press OK and look at that. Lo and behold, schedules. Schedules can have a dark mode. So if that tells you anything, I am more than likely going to keep with that dark canvas, which it seems weird that the schedule, I guess a schedule would apply directly to the fact that it's a canvas. I mean, it's within the canvas, yes, but not sure. Okay. Because whenever I change it to light, the background we get with the sheet is absolutely not this color. So I don't know. Maybe you can let me know in the comments if you found a kind of a workaround or a real reason why this is the case. But nonetheless, if you want a dark schedule background, then you're going to have to change that canvas color scheme to dark. And so this is going to apply to a few other things. And again, I'm going to leave these things within the links to these in the description so you can find these yourself. And that's going to apply to certain backgrounds and text and grid lines. Basically, all of these things will be overridden in a sense because you have chosen a dark canvas versus a light canvas. Okay, and that applies to buttons and scroll bars, check boxes, kind of everything that you would hope and expect, which is great. Okay, now we are going to go to a 3D view. Of course, this is going to apply the exact same to a 3D view. Obviously, you'd want to be in hidden line versus any other. The nice thing about any other setting, any other graphic setting, is that you'll be able to see those actual colors or shades or anything like that based on the textures and everything you're using, regardless of whether you have a light or dark background set in your canvas, which is great. Also, the other thing I want to point out, this is not new either, but within 2024, you can always come up to the View tab and then Canvas theme at the right, which is the exact same as going to File Options and then changing the canvas theme there. So you can toggle back and forth. You can see that color that's changed in the background. And obviously here, the vast difference there. The nice thing is, again, you can make this a white background and you could have your traditional Revit that you're used to seeing with a more or less white background. So that's great. The nice thing, really, the main feature with this in 2024.2 is that the colors better adapt based on the type of element to the actual background color you set, which is really the whole point here. And I'm glad we could do something like that. That makes such a difference. Okay, finally, let's move on to the next, which is a floor. Let's go ahead and look for a floor here. And I'm going to go ahead and put hidden line on. And we'll come in here and let's go ahead and isolate this floor. Really, any floor works just the same. So I'll go ahead and select this floor. We'll isolate this element. So we have this element here, and obviously you can see the colors that are working. Changing the canvas theme doesn't matter because those colors in this case stay the same. But what we're going to do is modify this element. So I don't care so much about this, but let's go ahead and add a couple points here. I'm going to add a point there and there and there. That's great. So if I wanted to select this element, obviously I can set the elevation. That's totally fine. But I can actually either set it at the current level, right there. I give it a base elevation. I can literally move it to a certain internal or survey point, or like literally the project base point, anything like that. So I can take that base elevation. So maybe you received a bunch of civil grades and they're all based on the survey point. You can set the survey point there and then just simply type in that number and then everything goes to there. That's great. And obviously, even if we leave that there and we get out of this, and I were to go to annotate and choose a spot elevation, I mean, obviously I didn't change this at all. So that's kind of the whole point. You can input it however you want. But really what is new between all of that is if I come back to modify this element, select that point again, our elevation base, we can now choose from the top plane, which is great. We could never choose from the top plane before. And the top plane in this case, we're actually applies to the top of the floor, because that's where the plane of any floor is determined. Obviously, if you have an offset that is based on the whole floor itself, that's totally different, because that would factor in, of course. But the top plane, basically the plane that the floor is being built on by default and then built down, that's a good point to be able to start from. And so in this case, it's 0, 0. And honestly, let's go ahead and show you this. If I were to change the level of where this is, I don't know where these levels are, but it doesn't matter. So this just moved up. And so if I were to, again, modify this there with the top plane, I'm working with 0, 0. That's literally at the level. And so the level doesn't matter. There's certain things that don't matter at that point. Whereas if I code at this point and say, you know what, the current level, it happens to just be, 1 foot, which is great. Internal origin, it's really nice. You could see this. So the only difference here, I know it's very small, but is that we can choose to edit these points from the top plane. And that also applies to topo solids, which is fantastic. It is all the same there, which is really cool stuff. Very simple, but really nice. Obviously, with this update, we have Dynamo updates as well. That is 20.19.3. Go check those out. Specifically, we're not doing Dynamo video here. This is really great. It's small. Again, these things are very small, but they matter quite a lot. And that is alphanumerically parameter sorting, which is really cool and really interesting. So we can see an example of this if we come over to Manage and Project Parameters. And so obviously everything here is sorted alphanumerically, which is great. There's really nothing more to it than that. But the cool thing with that more specifically is where we can see that, and that is within the properties palette. And so anything properties here, everything is going to be sorted by alphanumeric, which is really cool. And to serve as a test, obviously everything that we see here may or may not be, but it's actually based on the project parameter. So initially we pulled up the project parameter. So all of these are the only ones that will apply alphanumerically. Again, this is not a huge thing, but I went ahead and added 2 floor parameters, parameter 1 and 2, so that we could see how they sort. And if we come over here 2 dimensions within the floors, we can see there's parameter 1 and 2. And so my best guess here, and you might need to dig more into a specific article to find this information, because I can't seem to find it within the release notes. It looks like it takes all the built-in, and they're just kind of set the way they are. But then every parameter after that is sorted alphanumerically. That is specifically a project parameter. Obviously, built-in are different. The one thing I will say is if you wanted to change the sort order for some reason, you can change that in the Revit INI file. You'll find that information within the description below, specifically for this new feature. Okay, like I mentioned with the dark theme for the schedules and everything updating automatically, I will read this for you, and this is for automatically updating those colors and converting them for the new dark mode features. And so it says when switching the theme from light to dark, the color conversion is automatically enabled for all views to improve the existing readability in dark mode and reduce the eye strain. That's kind of the whole point of dark mode, right? We want to reduce eye strain, but not only that, now all the colors and everything kind of work with it. So all of the visibility adjustments only impact the dark theme. So be aware of that. The light theme is more or less kind of what we've had. They do not impact the real color settings of the light theme and print. Of course, if nothing impacts print because it's print, thank goodness. Default annotation colors and customized colors from visibility, graphic, object style, and properties dialog convert in the dark theme. So that is a huge, not necessarily red flag, but it's a flag that you need to be aware of, that colors might seem slightly different if you're using the dark theme than they really are. They really might print. So I think I will probably end up having my light canvas theme truly be light as if default, so I can quickly toggle back and forth and see the difference. So that's just a personal thing I'm probably going to end up going with more so in the future, just because I want to be able to see what does it literally look like if I'm going to print right now, that type of thing. All customized colors in schedule automatically adjust their visibility in the dark theme with good readability in both view and sheet. So we just saw that with the schedules. Very nice, very easy. Do not convert any customized color settings from the material browser, which is good, to keep the design material as expected in both light and dark. So materials, you can actually rest assured that they will look the same no matter what theme you're going with, which is good. Thank goodness for that. So you can call that a new feature, kind of lumped into the whole dark mode idea. All right, for this next feature, we will have to be within an area view, an area floor plan, or an area plan. And that is because it has to do with area boundaries. And we really only have access to those specifically within an area plan. Okay. And it's actually, this is the type of thing that you may not even have realized was not within Revit, nor did you really even care. You might have noticed it for 1 second, but then just didn't matter to you. So I don't know. Then that's for me. That's the case. So I'm going to come in here and let's just pick a couple of these walls here, and we're simply going to make a model group out of it. So that's fine. We picked a few walls there. We'll go ahead and create a group. That is group 3, I guess. That's fine. Please name your groups. If you're not making a tutorial, please do that for real projects. But within the edit group, obviously we have a limited set of tools, and normally this is docked or somewhere else, but this is the type of thing that you need to go in directly, obviously, into this edit group mode versus not edit group mode. But the main difference between 2024.1 and 2 now is that within a model editor or a model group editor, we have the ability to actually add area boundaries, which is so interesting. So I can now do this, and if I wanted to add an area boundary here, this will now be a part of the model group. And why is that good, you might ask? Well, if you have a specific element that is, actually impacting certain areas, you can embed the fact that it's doing that into a group. And so that's really cool stuff. Obviously, I can even go in and add other area boundary lines that already exist and just add them to the group. So that's cool. And you can see clearly, yes, that's a part of a group right there. We can see that's clearly a group member. So not a huge update, but very cool, because maybe you do have that model group that is impacting multiple levels or locations, and it does need to impact literally areas. Really cool stuff. I can see that really working well for life safety. Okay, moving on here, we have remember type properties divider setting. So this is very small. But something I'm sure you've noticed. And so if you come over here, applying directly to type properties. So whether it's the view and element, in this case, let's go ahead and select a wall here. Edit type. So literally this dialog box. The only new feature here, which is actually really great, is that it will remember the width. So if I set this width arbitrarily at there, I can't set it hard-coded by any means, but if I set that width, or if I set some of these to that, let's say I want this for some reason, I have a long URL in this information that I want to see every time I open the type properties. Well, this is now kind of baked in per machine, and your machine, your Revit, your everything will remember this, which is great. So obviously if you go and sign on another machine that's going to be different, you'll have to set it and it will continue to remember it, which is great. Obviously this is one of the smallest things Revit has released, but I can't say it's one of the worst, because it's really valuable to know, hey, my window's going to be this big, this is where my information is going to be, and I can move on. That's it. Really good stuff. Quite simple. Okay. And then finally, we're looking at create similar, a very underrated tool in my opinion, perhaps one of the most underrated. And the fact is now that create similar will work with more elements now. If you select certain things, you can create a similar element. So if I select this section, I can create similar, and now I'm creating another section, that type of thing. So I'm going to read this again because it's going to give you the specifics of this new feature. And so you can now use the create similar tool with lines, basically any model line, detail line, reference line, a separation, anything like that. But the cool thing is it's not just going to try and create a certain type of line for you. If we come back to this view and I select an area boundary line, we can see that if I create similar, I am all of a sudden creating a boundary line. That's great. Really cool stuff. Of course, it's always applied to walls and like really specific elements. Of course, it will work that way, which is great. Structural framing and beams, everything like that. Some considerations to be aware of is that circles and full ellipses, things like that. So let's go ahead and just draw a detail line that is a circle specifically. So I'm going to draw this here. I don't care the size or anything like that, but I'm going to go ahead and create similar. Click on this, create similar. And not only is it a just basic medium line that I use to make this circle, but it is a circle. So I can just basically draw another circle really quick. I love that. Very simple stuff, but you'll find that it doesn't work with everything, specifically with like arcs and whatnot. Like it's going to default to some of these other different line drawing styles. It's okay. Like it's going to get it's going to get you 99% of the way there, which is great. And that's with more elements, which is really cool. And it's the type of thing that you love to see. Makes working and doing what you expected to happen a whole lot easier, which is great. Okay. And then here we go. We have keep views in design option modification. So what does this really mean? Well, if you're working with design options and you accept the design option, you're going to typically want to delete those views that are associated to options that you're not going with, that you didn't accept. So here we go. It says when non-primary design options are deleted during accept primary, like I just said, all views that are created within the design options can now be preserved. So that's great. That's really good. Views are unchecked by default in the delete dedicated option views dialog, and you can check only those views you want to delete. Previously, some view types, such as drafting views or schedules, created specifically in a to be deleted design option, were checked for deletion and could not be unchecked. So that's kind of the main thing here. It's not that you can now preserve views, because you could, but there are some types of views, specifically schedules, it looks like, dedicated to those different options that you could not keep no matter what, which is great. So now you can keep them, is the point. Something else to be aware of is that by default, none of these views will be checked to be deleted. That's kind of a big flag to look for too. If you're accepting primaries, make sure that if you don't need the view, whether it's a schedule, no matter what, get rid of it. And so you just don't have to worry about it later on. So it doesn't confuse anyone and that type of thing. So it is nice. It is nice we have more ability to keep things that we might need down the line, but be aware that you might want to get rid of some things that you certainly know you don't need when you're accepting a primary. So those are all the major updates for Revit 2024.2. Really, really good. I can't say it's the most massive thing. Obviously, I think 2024 was itself one of the most massive releases of Revit, but nothing to say that 0.2, that's great. I love to see this stuff. Most of it is just kind of ease of use. Obviously, we like seeing everything with the dark theme, and everything seems like it's allowing your experience to operate within Revit more smoothly. I can't say I don't like that, right? Who doesn't like that? So that will do it for this Revit update video. Definitely look for the couple of links in the description for everything that we covered in this video and a little bit more. If you enjoyed this video or happen to learn something, please demolish that like button. It really helps me out a lot. Also tells me that, yeah, you might have learned something. Also consider subscribing. That helps out as well. And of course, I will see you in the next Revit video. Have a wonderful day, and thank you very much for watching.